Hi guys, this is Shivareddy. Welcome to the session on Hibernate interview question and answers. In this session, I am going to explain most frequently asked interview question and answers on Hibernate framework. So, and also I am going to explain these concepts using an example so that it is going to be easy for you to understand and also present the same during the interviews. So first, let us go ahead and start. What is meant by Hibernate and what is the main advantage of it? So Hibernate framework simplifies the Java development effort in order to talk to your application to the database. Hibernate is an ORM technology. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. So ORM technology is used to map your Java object to the corresponding rows of a particular table in the database. So there is a lot of, if you are not using the ORM tools, if you are using with the any JDBC connection, then you need to write a lot of code to get the connection, prepare a statement, and then you need to prepare the queries, and then you need to get the you need to fetch the result set. But ORM technology is going to simplify all these methods, and it is come up with a high level features where you need to write a few lines of the code, then rest of things automatically taken care by the ORM technology. So Hibernate is one of the ORM technology, and also Hibernate is a open source and it is a database independent. That means you can write an application to the talk to the one particular database. Later point of your time, if you want to change your application to different database, then there is no need of actually changing at the DEO layer. And then it has the high performance because Hibernate by default it is going to come up with the concept of caching. Caching is going to improve the performance of the application as it is going to reduce the number of the database calls you are hitting the database from the application. So Hibernate has the two level of the application, that is the first level of the two level of the caching. One is first level cache and second first level cache by default enabled at the session level, and second one we call as a second level cache. So this is going to be second level cache is going to be enabled at the application level. First level cache is going to enable at the session level, and that is going to be enabled default. And also it is come up with the concept as a its own data Hibernate query language and Hibernate criteria query language. By using these languages, you can write your own queries to get the data from to retrieve or to store the data in the databases. You can write your own queries instead of depending on the native SQL queries. Hibernate comes with an object-oriented SQL query where you can write your own queries using the HQL. So the HQL is going to be the database independent queries. So that is the one advantage of it. Now, in order to work with the Hibernate, it does not require a really SQL expertise, because most of the time the queries whatever you are going to use through the HQL, it is basically based on the how you are mapping the objects, mapping the classes in the case in the Java. And also, in the case of Hibernate, it automatically taken care of creating an tables, and table creation is automatically taken care of it. And also, it is going to provide the statistics related to the database and queries, so that whenever if you feel any performance degradation in the application, if you want to analyze the performance in order to tune the performance of the application by using these statistics, you can easily find out what is going wrong with the application. So this is the main advantage of the Hibernate framework when compared with the JDBC native JDBC connections. Now, next one is what is the Hibernate architecture, and what is the Hibernate architecture? So if you see Hibernate is always what happens is it is a ORM tool. So what happens is whenever you are working with a Java application, then your application will be having the Java application will having the Java object, that is the POJO classes. And now what ORM tool is going to do is it will convert the Java object into corresponding rows of a table in the database. That means it will whenever you save a particular Java object, then what ORM tool is going to do is it will take the Java object, it automatically converts equivalent of a one row in the particular database, and it is going to store it. Okay, so that is what meant by the ORM. Now, if you see the Hibernate architecture, there are few components which are very important while in order to work with the Hibernate. That is, the first one is configuration. And configuration, okay, so first one we consider as a session factory. So session factory is a used as a factory for the to create a sessions, and also this is going to be a thread safe object, and it is a client of connection provider. Now, in order to create this session factory, it is going to use the file called as Hibernate configuration.xml file, and it is going to read the all the database configuration related properties we are going to define in the hibernate.config file. And by reading this file, this session factory is going to be created. I am going to explain in detail about the hibernate.cfg file in later in the next question. But as of now, the session factory is going to be created from by using the hibernate.configuration file, and also it is going to use the connection provider as a client of it. Okay, and then what is meant by session? So session is a non-thread safe object. It is like a short-lived Java session object, which is going to use it to talk to the database. So by using the session object, you can create a you can create a query objects as a criteria object, and so that you can talk to the databases. So session is by default session maintains the first level cache. That means once you query the any object from the database, until you close the session, it will be maintained in the cache, so that next time whenever you want to try to retrieve the same object, instead of hitting the database directly, it will get from the cache, that is the first level cache, and it will return to the user. So it is going to improve the performance of it. And also it is going to be a factory of the transaction. That means by using the session, you can create as many transactions as want. So transaction is basically a unit in order to maintain the atomicity of the atomicity of your that means unit amount of the work. Either whatever the work you are going to do is either it should be a fully committed or the rollback. So transaction is going to be taken care of taken care of, make sure that you are achieving the atomicity for your transaction. And the connection provider is basically uses the dialect and also the database configuration in order to talk to the database. The connection will take care of it, and internally connection provider will internally take care of the JDBC APIs to talk to the database. But basically what the connection provider is going to do is it is going to convert your HQL queries into corresponding database compatible SQL queries. Okay, and then transaction factory is a factory. It is from this you can create in transactions, and transaction is basically to maintain the atomicity or the atomicity of the work you want to go. So then we are going to use the transaction factory. And query and criteria, these are going to help you to work with the SQL. That means in order to work, you want to fetch the data, or if you want to filter the some data on top of it, then the query and criteria is going to be used. So this query and criteria is going to be derived from the session, so that you can work with the to get the to whether in order to do the database operations, we are going to use this query and criteria. HQL stands for Hibernate Query Language. It is nothing but the query, and HCQL is going to stands for the Hibernate Criteria Query Language, which is going to use to filter your database whenever you are getting from the databases. Okay, so those are the main components it is going to involved in the Hibernate architecture. The next question is, what is the use of hibernate.configuration file? So hibernate.cfg.xml file is the fundamental or the element in order to work with the Hibernate. So I'm going to explain this one with an example. So if you see this program, I already written a small program. This is basically contains the hibernate.cfg.xml. So what it contains is, first one, it is going to have the database connection settings, and then you are going to have the connection pool, and then which dialect you are going to use to talk to the database. And if you want to specify any second level of cache for the application, then the configuration of it. And then you want to specify whatever the queries it is running Hibernate. If you want to display to the console, then you are going to specify this one. And then on what basis, whether the property is h2b ddl.auto, what it is going to specify is like every time when you restart the server, whether all the schema needs to be created freshly, or you want to only update the data. And then whatever the classes you are going to, if your application is having any annotation based, then those settings will be there. And if you are using the XML based configuration, then you are going to use the mapping. So by using hibernate.cfg.xml file, now the session factory is going to be created. So basically, you are going to provide all the details related to the database configurations, and also whatever the classes you are going to use in your Hibernate application. All these things you are going to specify in this hibernate.cfg.xml file. Now, whenever you are starting your application, first Hibernate will load this it will take this configuration file, and it will try to build your application. That means it will try to create your session factory using this all these parameters. So in this, in order to talk to the data, Hibernate talk to the database, it needs the driver class, and what is the URL for this database, and username, schema details. And then connection pool is basically how many connections by default it needs to be created when the application is starting. It needs to be specified by using the connection dot pool size. And Hibernate dialect is going to specify the which database you are going to talk to, and each database will have the separate dialect for it. So that what happens is whenever Hibernate talk to the database, it automatically converts the HQL queries compatible with the corresponding database SQL queries. And then if you are using the second level cache, then you are going to specify this cache dot provider for the second in order to maintain the second level cache. And show underscore SQL, basically whenever you execute a program, if you want to show that SQL queries on the console, then you are going to put true. And hbm.ddl.auto is going to be specify that every time when you are start the application, whether it needs to be created automatically created the tables, or if you specify, if you want to only update, then you can specify this parameters update. And if you are using an annotation base, then all the classes, whatever the annotation you are going to specify in your application, all these things you needs to be mapped here. If you are using the Hibernate with the XML way, then you need to map those all the HBM files to the in this file. Then once you start your application, first the configuration file is configuration is a interface is going to read this file, and it is going to create a session factory. If you see here, session factory equal to new configuration dot configure hibernate dot cfg dot build session factory. So by using this one, it is going to create a session factory. So session factory is going to be one time. That means for each database you are going to create only one session factory. Okay, if you are connecting to the 4 database, then you are going to specify 4 configuration files, and it is going to create a 4 different session factories. But only one session factory is going to be per database, and how many sessions you are going to use, you are going to create from using this one. Hope you are clear with the what is the main purpose of the hibernate.cfg file. And then the next question is, what is Hibernate dialect? Hibernate dialect is going to used by the Hibernate to talk to the database. That means in order to talk to Hibernate application to the corresponding database, then we need the dialect. So that is the one of the configuration I already specified in the hibernate.cfg, because in this example I am trying to talk to the database is Derby database. So in order to talk to the Derby database, I need to add the dialect as a arg.hibernate.dialect.derby dialect. And if you want, based on your database, which database you want to talk, you need to include that dialect. If you see here, there is a list of dialect which is specified by the Hibernate in the documentation. So these are the databases it is going to support. It is the DB2, DB2 AS by 400, DB2 OS, Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, Sybase, and Microsoft SQL Server 2008, SAP DB, Informax, Hypersonic SQL, H2 database, Ingress, Progress, and all these database it is going to support. So Hibernate is going to support almost all the database which are available in the universe, and the only thing is you need to specify what is the dialect you need to we need to specify the dialect before you are going to use your application, so that Hibernate will taking care of how to talk to these databases internally. It will taking care of it. Okay, so that is what it meant by dialects. The next question is, there are two ways you can create an application using the Hibernate. So one, using the HBML file, that means using the XML based Hibernate application. Second one is the annotation based application. So in this session, I'm going to show you the exact steps how you want to work with the two different ways. Either you can go with the XML way, or you can go with the annotation based. If you want to use with the XML based, then these are the steps you need to follow. First, you need to create a POJO class, and then you need to create a hibernate.html file to corresponding to the POJO. So by using the hibernate.html.xml file, now the whenever it is trying to store your object into the database, then this configuration file will be help you to map your Java object to the corresponding columns of the table. Okay, then you need to create, anyhow it is a mandatory for the hibernate.cfg file, and then you can create a session object, and then you can store or the retrieve using the Hibernate classes. And also you need to make sure that all the Hibernate required jars are actually available in your application. So I'm going to explain this one using an example in the Eclipse. If you see here, this is my Hibernate demo. In order to explain this project, in order to explain this concept, I have created this project. So if you see here, these are the libraries which are required to work with the Hibernate. So I added the libraries. First step is taken care of it. Second one is, first you need to create a POJO. This is a company is a POJO. POJO basically contains the properties, that is setter getter methods. That is the properties I defined as a private int, a company ID and company name. I created a setter getter methods, and also I created a one is a default constructor, and another one is the parameterized constructor. Make sure that always POJO must have the default constructors, because whenever the conversion is happening from the object, whenever you are trying to retrieve an object, automatically the Hibernate will will create an instance using the default constructor. So always make sure that you create a constructor of the default constructor for your POJO class. Once this is done, the second one is you need to create a HBML file, that is company.hbm.xml. So in this, basically what you are going to specify is what is the class you are trying to map, and also what is the table name it needs to be stored in the database, and what is the ID. ID basically is the primary column for the table, and the property is going to be company name. So what happens is, whenever you create a whenever you run this application, first it will check whether there is any table is available or not. If not, then it is going to create a table, and it will make sure that the company ID is going to be a primary key, and the column name is going to be company ID, and also column name, second column is going to be company name. Now once this is done, the third step is you need to create a class. That means you need to create a first session is going to be sorry. So this is the class. First you need to create a session factory. So session factory is equal, how to create a session factory, using the new configuration.configure. You need to specify the what is the configuration file you want to load it, and then build session factory. Now session factory is going to create using this configuration whatever you are going to provide in the hibernate.cfg.file. So here it is going to, it is a Derby database I used. So it will take this database configuration, and it is going to create a session factory. Once session factory is created, you can create a session. Session is going to be session factory dot open session. It is going to create a session. Once you create a session, you can create a transaction object using the session object. Session dot begin transaction is going to create a session. Now what I am doing is I am creating an employee object here. Employee company, sorry, company equal to new company of 101, and I am giving as Siva Java Techie as a company name. Then I am saving it. So this is the piece of the code which is going to say that yes, you need to save this object to the database. With this, what happens is whenever you invoke this session.save, now Hibernate will go to talk to the database and it will take this company object and it will be saved into the database. Then the transaction.commit, what it is going to do, it will commit the transaction and session is going to be closed. After that, I am trying to retrieve the same object, whatever I have stored in the database. I am trying to save the same, I am trying to retrieve the same object. Now I am trying to run this program. Then you can see the output as this is going to be saved successfully. So first it is trying to create a session factory. Then see here, it has saved object successfully. If you see here, insert into company. So it has make a insert statement, and then we have seen the object saved successfully. Then it has made a select statement to retrieve that object and retrieve successfully. So this is the piece of code is a fundamental code in order to use with the XML based Hibernate way. If you want to using the XML in order to talk to the database, then this is the smallest piece of the code you need to require. Hope you are clear with how to work with the XML based. Then I am going to the next concept is working with the annotation based. So in the case of annotation based, what happens is we no need to create that a mapping file where we have specified the company.hbm.xml file. Now there is no need of actually creating that file. Okay. So in the case of when you are working with the Hibernate using the annotations, the steps are create a POJavo class and then create a hibernate.cfg file and then create a class to store or retrieve and then load the required Hibernate classes before running the program. Now see, in this case what happens is this is the employee class I have created to use with the XML based. Forget about these named queries because this is to explain the further concept I have just put it here. But whenever you are working with the working with the annotation, first you need to create a POJavo class that is here private int employee ID and string employee name. And then what I have done is one default constructor we have created and also parameterized constructor to initialize the employee object. Then I have a setter getter methods. I just override the toString method to print the object of the employee. Now if you see here, we are going to do in order whenever you are working with the annotations based Hibernate application, then you need to put the entity. Entity is specifying that, yeah, this is the POJava class. It is going to be stored in the database. So by using the making an annotation as an entity, you are saying that this is the class you are going to save to the database. Okay. Now entity is defined and you are going to specify the attribute of a at the rate of ID. So what it means is it is the primary column. In the case of Hibernate, in the case of HBM5, you are going to specify same thing. What is the class and what is the table name and what is the ID and what is the properties. So here by default, what happens is whenever you are working with the annotations, these are the annotations will represent how it needs to be saved into the database. Okay, once you have make this entity classes and then you can go ahead and use the and also one more entry you need to add in the configuration hibernate.cfg file, that is this one mapping, and also you need to put the class. This is the employee class you are going to store into the database. Then you make this entry, then you need to create a program in order to talk to the database. So now how you need to create a session factory for in order to work with the annotations is annotation configuration.configure build session factory. Now this is going to create the session factory using the again the hibernate.cfg file, and again the same step, create the session and transaction you are going to save to the database, and then you can retrieve the database. Okay, so these are the few steps you are going to use to work with the annotation based Hibernate application. Now I'm running this program, then you can see the output. It is going to save and retrieve the object successfully. I have put the few more lines of the code to explain the further concept, but basically at this point of time, this is what the code we are talking about. First, it has made the insert into a employee table and then save object successfully. Then it make a select statement and it has printed the whatever the stored object successfully. Okay, so you are clear with how to talk, how to work with the annotations and how to work with the XML based in order to work with the Hibernate. See, the next question will be, what is Hibernate inheritance mapping? So how, whenever you have inheritance concepts, then how the Hibernate will taking care of those hierarchies to creating a table. So we have three types of the inheritance mapping. So you can, it is supported. One is table for class hierarchy, and table for concrete, and table for the subclass. Then next one is, what is the generator class, your class in the Hibernate. Generator class is basically specifies about how to create an identity for the given table. For example, if you see in the previous example where I have specified the employee type as a ID, and now ID is going to be the primary key for this column, then what generated strategy is going to specify is how to generate this value, whether it should be a sequence, or it should be an increment, or it should be like a auto, or it should be like table. So whenever you are working with the Hibernate, you need to specify one of this strategy. If you annotate it, then at the rate of generated value, you can specify that strategy is the identity, or auto, or sequence, or the table. What happens when you specify auto? So this indicates that persistence provider should pick an appropriate strategy for the particular database. So based on the database, automatically the persistence provider or the Hibernate will choose the correct path, which is going to generate the unique values always based on the data type. And next one, identity is going to be whenever you specify the generator strategy as a identity, then what happens is it indicates that persistence provider must assign primary key for the entity using the database identity column. For example, if you were working with the MS SQL Server 2005, there it is going to support an identity as a one column. So automatically it will be take that as an entity and it will generate. And sequence indicates that the persistence provider must assign the primary key for the entity using the database sequence column. For example, if you are working with the Oracle, then what happens is Hibernate automatically generate a sequence using the in the case of Oracle, and it will assign the value. And next one is table. When you specify this one, it is going to say that indicates that persistence provider must assign a key for the entity using an underlying database table to ensure the uniqueness. Now what happens is, based on the database type, automatically it will randomly check for the what is the strategy in order to maintain the uniqueness for that particular column, and it will be taken care. So Hibernate is going to support these types, and automatically when you are based on your database, automatically Hibernate will taken care of generating the sequence for you. The next question is, what is lazy loading in Hibernate? This is the one of the important feature which improves the performance of the application, because what happens is, whenever you are working with the Hibernate, you have the parent class and child class. Now what Hibernate is going to do is, whenever you are trying to load the parent class, then it will not by default load the child's associated. That improves the performance of the application. So whenever Hibernate loads the parent class, then by default it will not fetch the results associated to the its subclasses or the child classes. In Hibernate, lazy loading is true by default. For example, if you see the employee class have the two properties, that is employee ID and employee name. I have one more class called as a private address. Address is a child class of the employee. Now what happens is, now let us consider you are retrieving a particular employee. Then it will not fetch the address details until you are going to call address.get employee address. So this is going to be improve the performance of the application, because you are not loading the child objects when the parent is loading. This is called as an lazy loading in Hibernate. Now the next question is, what is the HQL and its advantages? HQL is going to be stands for Hibernate Query Language, which is going to be used to achieve the database independence for the Hibernate. That means whatever the queries you are going to write using the HQL, it is a object oriented programming for the writing the queries. Now what happens is, now whenever you are working with the in the case of JDBC, the query syntax from the one database to another database is going to be changed, so you have to manually change. But in the case of HQL, what happens is, you are going to write the queries using the objects or the classes, and also how the classes association between the classes you will take care of. Based on that, you are going to write the queries. So that what happens is, even tomorrow you are changing from the Oracle to the DB2 database, then there is no need of actually changing that the DEO layer or the HQL queries. For example, here I am going to give a small code how we are going to write the example. We are going to use the session object and also create query. If you see here, from employee, so employee is an entity name. Actually, you are not specifying the table name, you are going to specify the employee entity of the class. Then what happens is, the query will take care of this one to go and talk to the corresponding database. In the case of SQL, in the case of Oracle, what it will say, select star from employee. Like that, it automatically converts into a corresponding compatible with the database queries, and it will return the results. So this is the one of the example how it will work with the HQL. Okay. Now the basic advantage of HQL is, first it is going to you are going to write the database independent queries, and no need of actually know about the SQL, writing the SQL in the SQL. And third one, it is easy for the Java developer to maintain or write the even complex joins also you can easily write using the HQL. And then what is HCQL? HCQL stands for Hibernate Criteria Query Language, and this is going to help you to filter your results. For example, in the case of SQL, you have like a like operators, like operators, and order by, and also you can have multiple AND conditions to filter your results. So same thing you can HUD using the HQL in the Hibernate. If you see here, criteria is going to take the, it is also you are going to write the queries using the classes or the entities, not on the tables. Now if you see here, session, again you are going to create a criteria object using the session dot create criteria, where you are going to specify what is the entity or the class name, and you can add the restrictions, like if you want to specify like a what are the like operator or the greater than, less than, and equals, not equals, all these things you can add to the criteria dot add, and you can specify the restrictions, and also you can specify the order of the in which you want to get the results. By using that, automatically Hibernate will convert these things into a proper format, and it will give the result. So that is the advantage of the HCQL. And then what is meant by, what are the named SQL queries in the Hibernate? Now, for example, you are writing a small query and you are going to use in the multiple places. Then, if you are trying to hard code those values at the DEO level, then you are keep on repeating the same code at the multiple places. Instead of that, Hibernate will provide a feature called as a named SQL queries, named queries, where you are going to specify these queries at the top of any entity. Either it might be an entity, for example, if you see my older example, I have specified this named queries at the top of the employee class. Now, once you define this named SQL queries, then you can use this name as a anywhere while you are accessing the database. Now, same thing I'm showing the below. For example, I am saying the get employee list as a named query. Later point of time in any DAO layer, you can go and just use session one dot get named query is the one in order to fetch the named queries, and you can specify the name of the named query. Then automatically Hibernate will link that this query is actually mapped to the from employee. So it indirectly it will referencing this query. So first it will identify this as the named SQL query, named query, and it will go to the named query, identify what is the actual query it needs to be executed, and it will execute and it will return the result set. That is what it means meant by the named SQL query, named queries. And then next question is, what is caching in Hibernate and what is the advantages of it? So in Hibernate, having the better performance, the high performance of the high performance is due to caching. So Hibernate will have classify the caching at the two level, that is the first level cache and second level cache. First level cache is enabled by default, which is at the session level. That means whatever the objects you are storing at the session, if you don't close the session, automatically Hibernate will recognize that as a caching, and without hitting the database, it will first look for the cache and it is going to return to the result. And next one is the second level caching. Second level cache is going to be by default it will not enable. In order to enable the second level caching, you need to make a few configurations enabled. That is, first thing is you need to go to the Hibernate cfg.xml file, where you need to specify the what is the cache you are going to use. There are different type of the cachings we are available, that is EH cache, InfiniSpan cache, OH cache. So there are different type of the caching mechanisms are available. So based on requirement, you can choose any one of them, then you are going to enable that caching feature here. Once you enable the caching here, then the second level cache is going to available at the global level. Once you enable caching second level cache, then all the sessions whatever you are going to create from the session factory can access those variables, or the data it can be access all the sessions. But the first level cache is only available whatever the data it is going to available only before actually you are closing the session, it can be available. I'm going to explain this one with the running the program. In the next concept we are going to see that only. So what are the different state of an object in the Hibernate? So Hibernate will have the basically three types of the states. First one is the transient state, and then persistent state and detached state. I'm going to explain this one using the concept. Now if you see here, what is meant by transient state? So you have created an employee class, sorry, a company class here. You are creating, just now you created an object. So for this is called a transient state. That means you have created an object using the new operator, but it is not associated to the any session. Then this state is called as an, now the employee, whatever the state, it is called as an transient state. That means transient state means just now it has created an object, but it is not associated to the session, is called as transient state. Once you associate to the object to the session, then it will become the persistent state or persistent state. Persistent means once you associate the object to the session, then it will be keep on tracking of the changes whatever happening on this object. Now the session dot save, at this point of time what happens is the state of an company object will become the persistent. Once the session is closed, then this company object whatever it is called as a detached state. Now I'm running this program, then what you can see is that it is going to save the database and it is going to retrieve. So it has saved the object successfully. Now what is meant by transient? Transient means we are just now created an object but not associated. But we say persistent, what we are saying is Hibernate will keep track of the changes whatever it is happening on the object. For example, now I didn't close the session, just I am updating the company name to Siva Java Techie once again. Now what happens, now when you run this program, you can see the output. Automatically it will update the status, update this company name to the latest whatever we are setting. If you see the console output, see here, first it has inserted into the database, then there is an update statement happen, because after we save the database, after we save the object company, I modified the state of an object using set company name. I have set it to the different value. So Hibernate automatically keep track of the changes whatever it is happening on the object, and it has updated successfully. That is the reason when you retrieve the database second time, you have see the company name we are getting as a Siva Java Tech, because this is the latest one I updated. So now you got what is the difference, I guess. Once you have make as a object state as a persistent, means Hibernate will keep track of the changes whatever it is happening on that. And once you session is closed, now the company object will become the detached. Okay, so these are the three states we are going to say. First is the transient to it will come to the persistent, and persistent it will go to the discharge status. Then next question is, what is the difference between the get and load? So whenever you want to retrieve a object from the database, you are going to call the get or the load. Whenever you use the get method, what it is going to do is it will first directly go to the database and hit the database and try to return your result. And if result is not found, then it is going to return the null. But in the case of load, what happens is whenever you say load, then first it will go and create a proxy object instead of actually hitting the database. First it will go and check whether it is available in the cache. If not available in the cache, it will create a proxy. Using the proxy object, it is going to return. And if it is not available in the, for example, you are loading a employee of ID 101. If it is not available, then what happens is it is going to throw the object not found exception. So you are sure that the data is available in the database, then invoke the load method. But you are not sure that whether the whatever the data you are looking for is not available, then better to use with the get method. You can you can get using the get. Okay, and the next one is the yeah. So next one is get is always go and hit the database and it is going to return the result. In the case of load, it will first look for the cache. If not available, then it is going to create a proxy object. Instead of actually returning the actual object, it is just returning the proxy object. Okay. And then what is the difference between the update and merge? Update is used to update the state. Update is going to method is used to update an state of an existing object. But if you are not sure whether you are having the particular session you want to update, or if it is in the already session is closed and you want to update, then go ahead and use the merge. Merge basically what it is going to do is, if it is session is available, then update will be work. If it is not available, then merge statement what it is going to do is, it is going to merge the latest changes with the whatever the changes old have, right? Automatically it will match. And what is meant by auto dirty checking Hibernate? Auto dirty checking feature is whenever you are working with the a session based, or the whenever you are submitting any request to the Hibernate, then Hibernate will keep tracking of automatically whatever the changes it is happening on the object, as long as it is in the same session. This is what I also shown you, right? Even though you have saved the company object, still after you changing this value to the new value, then Hibernate will keep on tracking these changes and it will make sure that it is going to update the database. That is called as an auto dutting checking feature. And then what is the proxy object in Hibernate? Proxy object is only comes into the picture when actually you are calling the load method. So whenever you call the load, first it will go and check whether it is available in the cache or the in the cache. If not available, then what it will do is the cache, the Hibernate will create a proxy object by subclassing the whatever the class you are looking for, and it will return to the application. Once you invoke any method on top of that proxy, then actually it will go to the database. It will fetch the result and it will return. Instead of actually you are just looking for the object until you invoke something on the top of the method using that object, then actually it will make a call and it will return the database. Okay, so that is what meant by the proxy object in Hibernate. The next question is, what is meant by native SQL? So far we have seen that HQL is going to be the database independent language where one time you write a queries using the HQL, automatically taken care of it. But if you think that in your project, if they have any specific requirement here, Hibernate HQL or the HQL does not fulfill your requirement, still Hibernate will provide a option for executing your SQL. That means the SQL queries in the Hibernate. So that is called as native SQL support. How you can use, how can you can write a SQL is, you can write it like a normal SQL, and using the SQL query session dot create SQL query is going to the method which is going to provide you to execute the older way how you are going to execute the queries like a select star from EMP. So by using this SQL query object, you can invoke the native SQLs. Hope these are the most frequently asked interview questions as much as I have ever paid. So if you have still any questions on the Hibernate, please comment on my YouTube video so that I can prepare the second session to follow up with this session. Okay, so thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel to get more technical videos. And if you have any questions, please comment on my YouTube video.